Let's explore the feeling of shame, because shame is in most ways a psychological experience, meaning it's a combination of a thought and a feeling that produces a biological sensation. And it's not entirely clear, at least I'm not clear, whether animals feel shame, right? Obviously, they don't think shame. Biologically, they show symptoms of shame. And so one of the interesting questions is whether shame comes out of the biology and through human language emerges into thoughts and feelings and beliefs, or whether it goes the other way around, or both. But in order for us to feel shamed, the first thing we need is an identity. And an identity is simply something that I, the ego, identifies with, attaches to. So let's take the pattern of this hand. The ego identifies with this hand. It says, that's me. Now, this is a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. There's a pattern. I do things with this hand. I see this hand. I attach to it psychologically, right? I say, that's me. Now, once you have identity that the I attaches to, a pattern, then there is the predisposition for shame, because to be shamed is to have one's pattern dishonored, disregarded, violated, unconsidered, uninvited, right? So there's all kinds of patterns out there, all kinds of mental patterns, emotional patterns, physical patterns. Energy takes a vast array of forms. But we don't feel shame if a tree falls on somebody else's house, because we don't identify with it. We don't attach to that house, right? There's no shame. We don't feel shame if someone else's child in another race, in another country, with a different belief system, with a different culture, if they misbehave. Well, that's them, right? But if if something we identify with, we attach to it with our I, and then this happens, right? If we belong, if we identify with a family, and one of the family members behaves embarrassingly, inappropriate in the context of, the cult that they're in, right? So if I identify with my family, and one of my family members behaves in a way that seems shameful, then I feel ashamed. If somebody punches me and I can't restore the honor of the energy pattern, I feel ashamed. If I identify with a behavior and everyone in the group says that behavior is not welcome, go away, but that's me you're asking to go away. Go away. We don't want that behavior around here. But that's who I am, says the ego. I identify with that behavior. That's my free expression. That's me. That's who I want to be. That's what I find beautiful. And everyone says to go away. If I identify with a belief or a gift, I think this is an amazing gift. I'm so excited to give you this gift, and I give you the gift, and you don't think it's good. But that's me, right? That's me giving that gift. Now I feel shame. Or I may shame. So shame emerges in that phenomena, and the question is, do I take the shame or do I give it back? For example, I might say, well, this is an amazing gift. You obviously don't have good taste, right? None of you have good taste, right? This is a great activity. This is who I am. I'm great. You're not, right? Because when you have an identification with a pattern of energy and there's a dissociation with the group, in the eyes of the group, this isn't looking so good. This is not welcome. This is looked down on. There is the phenomena of shame. Shame is the phenomena of the realization of separateness. And this can be traumatic. Shame can be traumatic for the simple reason that it is impossible for an individual human being to survive without the participation of many other individuals of the group. The individual is dependent on the group. Now we create nice little illusions and we say, I'm my own person and I do what I want, but that's not actually the case. I can't buy anything if other people won't sell it. I can't sell anything if other people won't buy it. I can't build, pay for, and then produce my own nuclear power plant. I'm dependent, right? I can't communicate if other people don't agree to speak my language or some language that I can understand, right? So we are deeply connected to one another. And shame is the phenomena of realizing our distinction and of our difference in a larger context in which we as an individual depend upon the group. And so in particular, the first shames being the distinction between mother and father and the child, the shame of I'm different. Mom wants that, but I want this. There's a sense of shame. There's a sense of difference. But, when we realize that we're different from the crowd, different from the group, different from all our friends in some way, and that difference might separate us, there is a sense of shame. And if there's a judgment on top of the shame, like it's not just that we're different and we don't want that activity around here, that's a bad activity. If there's a judgment, then there's a deeper separation. And that can go both ways. I can say, well, since none of you are intelligent enough to appreciate my activity, I will take it somewhere else where better people will appreciate what I have to offer, right? So that would be giving the shame to the group as the group gives the shame to the individual. Or the group can give the shame to the individual and say, we don't want that activity and we don't want those types of people who like to do that kind of activity. And it's like the ego is being rejected. Now, without the ego, without the I to identify, it's just a witness, right? so-and-so is being raped, being sexually molested. There's a witness. So-and-so is being joked about behind their back. I don't identify with so-and-so. And I don't identify with the ideas behind back, and I don't have a particular agenda. And so there's no shame. There's just witnessing. It's just witnessing. But with thoughts, when we identify with something we're witnessing and say, that could be me, that's being ostracized. I could be ostracized. And I don't like that. And I think that what that person did was a good idea. Why are they being ostracized by that? This is upsetting, right? And so there can be also an anger response to this sense of partition. But for there to be shame, there must be a separation, a differentiation, a line, with some people on this side of the line and some people on that side of the line. And often it is the minority that is shamed, because the minority is more dependent on the majority in certain ways than the majority is dependent on the minority. If I get sent to prison, which is a certain form of shame, I'm dependent on the system, the majority, to get out. But the system is not dependent on me to get out because it's bigger than me. So shame often has, an intensity that has to do with size. When a parent beats an infant, there's a deep level of shame because the infant is in a dependent relationship with a giant. And the giant is saying, you're not good enough. That's why I'm beating you. That's the message. You're not good enough. If you were good enough, you wouldn't be beaten. But it's a very intense message because of the size. When an entire crowd shouts at an immigrant, go home, go home. An individual cannot shout louder than the crowd. An individual cannot persuade a mob. An individual cannot fight and win against the mob. And so they will leave, and with that will often be a feeling of shame. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't welcome. I am separate. Who I identify with is not wanted. What are your relationships with shame? Where have you been shamed? Do you feel shame to talk about your shame? Because in a cult that denies much of its shadow, that feels that weakness is somehow unwanted and inferior, are you shamed for having shamed in our cult to the extent that you don't necessarily want to talk about it? Thank you.